Welcome to episode 157 of Girl Take the Lead, where each week we explore womanhood and leadership. And I'm your host, Yo Canny. Mother's Day Movement, an organization we've highlighted since 2022, returns to talk about their beneficiary for 2024, the African Education Project. Discussing these great organizations, we have Dominika Turkcan, partner of Mother's Day Movement, and she's joined by Julie-Anne Savarit-Cosenza, co-founder and executive director of the African Education Project. These two amazing leaders will cover histories, metrics, and impact their organizations are having on the global stage. Please enjoy the listen and consider donating to their causes. Check the show notes for the links you might need. Here you go. Hello, my friends. Welcome back, Dominika, to Girl Take the Lead. I look forward to it annually that you're going to come and tell us about Mother's Day Movement. And also, we have another guest with us who will learn more about. And Julie-Anne, welcome to Girl Take the Lead.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's get started. For those of you that don't know Dominika, could you mind introducing yourself, Dom, and then letting them know a little bit about Mother's Day Movement? We'll get more into it as we go through the episode.
Sure. So thank you again for having me. I'm thrilled to be here and I love your podcast. So thank you again. So I am Dominika Turkcan and I'm from the Mother's Day Movement. I'm a partner there. And do you want me to get into what we do right away or should I hold off?
Why don't you talk if you could just kind of top line it and then we'll get into it.
Sure. So Mother's Day Movement is about shifting a portion of your Mother's Day gift to underserved women and children. So the premise of what we do is over 35 billion was spent on Mother's Day gifts in the US last year, and we advocate to redirect those funds.
I think that is just amazing when you think about the $35 billion with a B, you guys, not just an M. It's a B as a boy. So, and okay. And Julie-Anne, you want to talk to us a little bit too? But
sure. And thank you again, for having us. I am Julie-Anne. I'm one of the co-founders and the executive director of the African Education Program. We're the Mother's Day Movement 2024 beneficiary partner this year. So very, very excited. And in a nutshell, we empower Zambian children, youth, and women for lasting community change. And we do this through long-term investments in education, in health, and in leadership development. And I'm excited to share a lot more about what we have going on.
Yeah, and congratulations on being the beneficiary. That's just terrific. And we just love to hear. And maybe, Dom, you can tell us a little bit about how Mother's Day Movement has been doing, because this is your third visit to the show. And every year you kind of update us on how things are going. But how did the last year go?
Sure. So last year we raised just under 50,000 for an organization called Saving Mothers. They're based in New York. It's run by a OBGYN here, and she works in developing countries, helping with maternal mortality outcomes. And then she also works here in New York City, and that's what our campaign primarily funded, helping close the racial maternal mortality gap here in New York City, because the rates of Black maternal mortality are much higher here than in other parts of the US, and then especially as compared to other races. And so we raise money for these birth kits, and they had, it's aimed at women in their first trimesters, and it had blood pressure monitors, information about kind of self-empowerment, how to speak to doctors and healthcare providers, how to work with community health partners to help improve those outcomes. So overall, we're doing really well. But I wanted to kind of touch on something else, is that we were 5 women last year, and now we're 7. So we have grown in terms of our core team, and we all work pro bono. And the concept is the same, that 100% of the funds raised go directly to the selected beneficiary. And kind of about that, so AEP is our selected beneficiary this year, and we advocate for, every year we select one organization. And so AEP was our organization this year. And we pick one and we say, hey, this year, this organization is doing incredible work. And, please donate here because we want this kind of collective impact.
Mm. So Julie-Anne, tell us a little bit about African Education Project, or AEP, and how exciting the news is for you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, maybe I'll start with how exciting the news is for us, and then I'll tell a little bit about the story. For the Mother's Day movement to select us is just such a show of faith, in that what we're doing works, that we're really having great impact in the lives of these Zambian children, youth, and women. And so to have a group like Mother's Day movement select us, across domestic organizations doing incredible work in the US and orgs doing work across the world is just, really inspiring and moving. And it's been a really nice, couple of months working together, getting our stories together to promote this campaign. So just feeling really privileged and grateful that MDM chose us this year. It's a really exciting year for us because we're actually celebrating our 20-year anniversary. And so the timing felt really, right, with stars aligning. And so essentially, as I mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders. So I've been with AEP since the beginning. And we were essentially just supposed to be a high school project with a few friends, had the idea to collect and ship books and computers to a community in Zambia that we had a personal connection to through my soccer coach. And, as kind of crazy teenagers, decided we would become a 501c3 nonprofit because people would give us more money. And just, any challenge that came our way, we just overcame it and collected the books and raised the money and shipped the goods. And that was really supposed to be the end of the story. Very fortunately, we received a grant to go and travel and meet the community receiving these goods. So just after high school graduation, our senior week was going to the Jersey Shore. I'm originally from Philadelphia. And then we had a second senior week in Zambia where we got to meet this community. And it was in meeting our peers and community leaders that they came to us and said, why don't you open a center so that all of these books and computers can go in one place as opposed to being distributed, across different schools in the area. And so the following year, that's exactly what we did. We opened the youth center and we have just been growing organically ever since. Today, that center is what we call a learning and leadership center in a town called Kafue in Zambia. And it's just this thriving hub of holistic programming focused on education, on health, on entrepreneurship, financial literacy, arts, creativity, and most important, that leadership development. And what's amazing to think about is in our first year, we had about 25 youth, coming to the center, using the books, using the computers. And this year we'll be reaching 4,000 children, youth, and women through our programs at the center and through outreach in our schools. So yeah, a lot of growth over the years.
And how many years?
So 20, we're celebrating 20, and the center has been open for 18.
Congratulations for the tenacity it took to probably keep it going at times. I'm sure that there were lots of times you went, yeah.
Yeah, you could say that. And I think for me, sometimes I don't feel like those years went by. But one thing I'm most proud of is that the majority of our Zambian team are actually alumni of the program who through our scholarships have gone to university and they've come back to spearhead the work. So when I calculate that I knew them as children and that now they're my teammates and my colleagues, it means the years have gone by. So.
And I'm not sure we covered the history of Mother's Day movement. I always want to go MDM, but because it's such an interesting beginning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Mother's Day movement, or MDM, that's what we like to call ourselves internally. We grew out of a column in the New York Times by Nicholas Kristof. We love him. And so he's a journalist there, and he made the case to move the apostrophe in Mother's Day. So it doesn't just honor one mother, but it it honors underserved mothers everywhere. And that was kind of the genesis of it. And one of our co-founders, Eva Hausman, connected with him, is still in touch with him today and updating him on our activities and, how we can collaborate. And so that kind of also through his scholarship, he writes a lot about, historically about paying attention to these type of organizations, to highly effective small nonprofits and the like, and kind of different systems and where we can make an impact and have, change, not to stand silent. So, since that time, that was in 2011, the group has raised just under $1 million. And we've been featured in different media publications. So here on this podcast, on NPR, the New York Times, Ms. Magazine, and we're, very proud of that. And we've also, since that point, we have this kind of portfolio of organizations that we worked with, both domestically and abroad. And we're, very proud of them. And we're also proud to partner with an organization like AEP. But I wanted to highlight kind of our focus on women and children. So using the rights-based approach, it's one that's centered around human rights. And it examines how power structures and systems impact the most marginalized and vulnerable people in the world. And those people are most often women and children, and also especially girls. And, closely related to this is gender equality, which is about the fair resource, distribution between the gender, so between men and women. And it recognizes that there are different obstacles that are faced by different genders, and then there are different approaches in terms of tackling them. And so, why is this important? And, why is it important to help organizations like AEP and to care about what we do? Is that gender equality boosts development and economies. And I kind of have this global kind of community perspective. And so, upholding human rights and gender equality, especially for women and children, is the core of development. It is the core of philanthropy. And so we want to advocate from a place, action from a place of responsibility, that we're part of from a global community and justice.
Mm-hmm.
I'll leave it at that. But
that's pretty well, and you have shown that. I mean, you've really followed, I think, the essence of that book. I mean, we talked about the book, I think, in our very first episode together, and I'll have all of that in the show notes for people to link to. But the work that you're doing, that both of you are doing, is just so incredible and making such a big difference. And it's just an honor to have you here today. Dom, I know that, we talk sometimes about metrics, and do you want to talk about any of that? You're welcome to.
Sure. I mean, I'm a policy analyst, so I like numbers.
He loves that stuff.
So we've supported charities, as I mentioned before, in the US and abroad. We like to focus on organizations with budgets of like 3 million or less, because with the amounts of money that we're fundraising, we can kind of impact the most change with those dollars in a smaller organization. And so we focus on areas of education, maternal health, hunger, clean water, and human trafficking. That's kind of been our history, but we're open to kind of all areas. And so some metrics, our highest fundraising totals ever were for Shofco, which was 125,000, and Dig Deep, which was 133,000 that was raised. So kind of adding some impact to those numbers and some of our other campaigns. So with the funds raised with Shofco, a school was built with 18 classrooms in Kenya. And since then, that school was taken down. They built a new one. That organization has just skyrocketed. One of the founders of it was in Times 100 most influential people this past month. And so they're huge. But I mean, that's, incredible to, have a school built. Adizia, which is another organization, they make plumpy nut that helps severely malnourished children. So we can say we saved the lives of 21,000 infants. So that's based on, 105,000 was raised. And according to their stats, $50 will save one child's life. So it brings them back from severe malnourishment. And then like for the Fistula Foundation, we raised $60,000, but that $60,000 funded 100 obstetric fistula surgeries for women. So 100 women had these surgeries. And so, these are just some stats of where the funding goes. And as I mentioned before, all of us work for free. We don't even touch the money. It goes directly to that organization, and they use it for, what is agreed upon ahead of the kind of campaign launch. And then we follow up with them and stay in touch and like 6 months out, 1 year out, and then over time, how did these funds help you?
Yeah. Pretty exciting stuff, huh, Julie-Anne? You're going to have a little shot and a little help and support. You must be very excited about the whole thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So this year you did something a little bit different, which I passed along to some of our listeners who may know a little bit about the RFP that you put out, which I thought was a terrific idea, to hear from other people. How did that work, Dom? Did that go according to what you thought it would?
I mean, nothing ever goes according to the way. But this was a pilot. We work pro bono. So like I have a job. And so, there's limited, finite time. So it takes a lot of time to research organizations, our old method. It was very interesting because you're kind of like, what do I care about? What do we care about? What should we be thinking about? Organizations, I've worked in nonprofits, have their own capacities. And it's like, we thought, why don't they just come to us? Then we're more aligned and they have the capacity to work on this campaign with us, which is, primarily a marketing, advocacy, education campaign. And it was a pilot this year and it worked. So we were so excited. I remember when we had like the first application and the second one. And then in the end, we had a lot. And so it was really hard because we were then interviewing these organizations and, we had a different, kind of new problems, but not problems, but new issue, new things to think about, which I find very exciting.
Yeah.
So we're going to do it again. And we will release it this summer. So we encourage listeners to sign up for our newsletter or follow us on social. And, they can nominate organizations, but the organizations themselves need to apply. And the reasons for that are, they should just share the RFP within a worthy organization.
Okay.
And, but the organization itself needs to apply just so that they know what they are kind of signing up for.
Sure. And I'm wondering, Julie-Anne, did we cover everything that, I know you could probably talk for hours about AEP, but anything else you'd like to tell our listeners? Like, how could they learn more about it? Maybe that would be good to know.
Sure. And maybe before, I share how they can learn more, as Don was saying, impact, statistics really, I think, resonate to show what we're doing, right? So, for example, it's the Mother's Day movement. So when you look at the mothers that we're working with, those that graduate from our women's business training on average have 107% increase, in their income. And that's through a 4-month training program. When you look at our young women, 98% of the young women in our reproductive health access initiative won't become pregnant before the age of 18. Locally, there's actually a 15 to 20% pregnancy rate for under 18-year-olds. So that's the type of impact, that we're having on the ground in Zambia. But I think what I want to share, it's also really about our stories, about the leaders that have come in through the program. So for example, Febby, I met her when she was in 9th grade and she knew she wanted to work in special education. And, she did all of her high school with us. She then went on to university and she came back and she's now actually the visionary and the leader of our special education program. And she's just wanting not just to change the lives of the children that we work with today, but how can we transform special education, across Zambia? And those are the types of leaders that are really coming through our center and going back and plowing back into their communities. So
I just got chills on that. That was like, that was just like amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, and there's so many more FEVIs. Our whole team is a bunch of FEVIs, and then even those that aren't working for the organization, they're out there in their communities, creating change. And especially when, Dom, you were talking about gender equity, how that changes, communities. Something we like to focus on is not just working with girls. We actually work with girls and boys, young men and young women, because we think, or we believe, that if you leave these boys and young men behind, if you're not equally empowering them, you'll never actually get to that place of gender equity, where girls and women are truly respected as equal partners and start having access to, equal resources. So it's such a critical part of our work. And we've seen how, that is starting to create real change in the communities that we're serving. So yeah, that's just, I could talk for hours, right? We could be here.
I wanted to
all night. Yeah, go ahead.
To your point, exactly. Like, we worked with an amazing organization in Kenya called Kenya Connect, and we worked on a boy-girl, we funded a boy-girl empowerment program, which was basically a sex education program for girls and boys and their parents. And that's a very critical part. It's, these are hard things to talk about, but to include, all children, all youth, all genders, it's very important in the conversation, because you need to have everyone aligned if we want to achieve these outcomes. And also, we were so impressed and taken aback by their special education program. It is so unique. We look at a lot of organizations, around the world that are similar to AEP, and they're worthy, they're doing incredible work, but this was very unusual in a positive way, because you see these children of all abilities, but some are deaf, autistic, and they're in their classrooms and in their center in Zambia, and it's just very impressive.
Yeah,
what they're working on, and it's that no one is forgotten, everyone is valued. It's very interesting. So we were really, looking at so many different organizations. It was unusual.
So where could they learn more? I mean, do you want to send them to the website, or what would be good?
Sure. Well, so we have two websites. You can always visit mothersdaymovement.org. You can also visit africaneducationprogram.org/mothersdaymovement. I think you can find both of us on every social media platform: Instagram, Facebook, X, LinkedIn. I think you just type us either in, and you will find the campaign. And just thinking about how your dollar creates impact, every amount can change a life. For $30, we can provide a young woman with reusable menstrual hygiene products that will last her years. For $150, one of those mothers can access that women's business training that I was talking about earlier. So for $150, you're going to increase her income by 100%. For $2,500, you can actually provide an annual college scholarship for one of our students in Zambia. Nothing compared to what it costs in the US, but you're drastically changing a life. So, a dollar of any amount really goes such a long way in empowering someone on the ground in Zambia. So yeah, please visit website, social. If you can't find us, I know it'll be in the show notes. And yeah, thank you.
Great. And what about Mother's Day Movement? Let's just send them to I'll have that in the show notes too.
Yeah, have it in the show notes. And we're also on social and on Instagram, and LinkedIn. So depending on, whichever platform your listeners prefer, they can find us. And we usually have links. So for example, for a campaign, it's almost every day we have links to it, and we post also in our off season as well.
Yeah, I think your newsletter is fantastic. So people sign up for that, and that we'll send you the link for donations to Mother's Day Movement, because that 35 billion is still in my head. I just can't shake it.
Incredible.
And when you hear how far a dollar could go with AEP, it's like, yeah, let's just all do it, you guys. Just put some money in the bank there for them. Okay, so I always ask my guests these two questions. What advice do you have for younger generations that are getting started in their careers and taking off? Dom, you want to go first?
Sure. So when thinking about this question, okay, so as a background, I knew this question was coming, but when I was thinking about it, I realized it's really challenging to give advice to Gen Z because unlike my adolescence as a millennial, Gen Z grew up with smartphones and social media. And so this kind of thought brought me to the research of Jonathan Haidt. He is a social psychologist at NYU and a youth mental health expert. And, he writes in his research that Gen Z has poor mental health as compared to other generations. And about 30 to 40% report to be anxious and or depressed. And this is also gendered. So the CDC reports that 57% of teen girls in the United States felt persistently sad or hopeless. So these are stats from 2021, and that's double of boys. And this is a 60% increase and the highest levels reported over the past decade. So Dr. Haidt has a lot of advice that he gives, everything from, don't let kids take phones to school or whatnot. And for these kids who are in their early 20s or entering that decade, he also talks about being rooted in community and social ties. And so that's my advice, is to root yourself in your community, to strengthen your social ties with your friends, your family, your teachers, your neighbors, your colleagues, whoever it is in your life, and, care about your local community, but also your global community. Because, from my point of view, we're interconnected and we have a responsibility to one another, kind of from a humanistic perspective. So that's a very long-winded response.
Well-grounded, always, Tom, well-grounded. How about you, Julie-Anne? What would you say to our younger generations?
So I am so glad you asked this question and that we got to prepare a bit. I actually was asked to give the keynote speech at my high school's graduation coming up in June. So I had already, I have to get my speech going. This is not the speech you write the night before, right? And so this question was actually perfect because I kind of already been starting to think about this. And so where I landed is, we're facing a lot of challenges, in the world today, and they really seem insurmountable. There's war, there's climate change, there's poverty. But what I truly believe is if everyone can do their small part, we can create a change. We can create impact, and we really shouldn't overlook no one, whether it's younger generations or older generations. I think it's the same advice. Don't overlook and don't value a small success, a small change, one life impacted, because even if we're just pushing the needle a tad, it's still pushing that needle in the right direction. So if collectively we could come together and each do our part, I think we would really start to see change. And just to tie it back to the African education program, that's why we've always focused on quality over quantity. We've always known that one life change in a meaningful way to us is more valuable than touching 100 lives, for a singular moment. And it's like, I give that example of Febby, spearheading special education. If I look back at the last 20 years, even if it was just Febby that came out of this program, it was worth it, right?
Yeah.
And so let's not overlook the small success, the small change that each and every one of us can do.
Well, you are an example of that. Who knew, right, that when you started that in high school, that you'd be doing it 20 years later at such a scale? So I think that's great advice for all of us. Okay, girls, what would you tell your 20-something self?
Trust yourself.
Trust yourself.
Be more confident. It's cliche, but yeah, I hear it all the time. I heard it then. I should have been paying more attention.
I love that one too. It's like listening to your intuition more. Yeah. How about you, Julie-Anne?
I was actually exactly along the same lines. Trust the journey that you're on. You know, there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be winds and turns. But each moment is leading for you, my 20, something self to be exactly where you should be. And I would tell her to trust herself, trust her intuition, and most importantly, trust her vulnerability, because it's her greatest strength and she really should not shy away from it.
So well said, ladies. Anything else before we close the episode today that you want to communicate or talk about?
Just want to say we're really, proud to be here on this podcast, and we're proud to partner with AEP. They do highly effective work, and we're just thrilled to have them as our 2024 beneficiary. And, we like to say at Mother's Day movement, for the price of a bouquet of flowers, you can save a mother's life. And we just want Mother's Day to be meaningful and to matter.
Thanks. Anything else, Julie-Anne?
Just want to echo that thanks for having us, for giving us this platform to share, and really hope all of your listeners join us in the Mother's Day movement.
All right, come on, listeners, let's do it. All right, thanks again for being here and for talking so openly and honestly about your organizations. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening today, and we sure hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please leave a comment wherever you listen to your podcasts, tell a friend about us, join our public Facebook group, Girl Take the Lead, or visit our website, girltaketheleadpod.com. We also have a YouTube channel where your subscription would be appreciated. Once you're on YouTube, search at Girl Take the Lead. And we recently expanded into YouTube Music, where you can find a video of this episode. Here are 3 takeaways from today. 1, for the price of a bouquet of flowers, we can save a life by donating to MDM. Can you believe that $35 billion are spent on Mother's Day? 2, in 2024, AEP will reach over 4,000 children, youth, and women, and they offer a peer-to-peer education program in local schools and HIV awareness programming through their Kids to Care initiative. In addition, one of the most extraordinary things about AEP is that they provide special education support. 3, our donation to MDM can help achieve AEP's mission and the 750 children, youth, and women who access their highly impactful programs and resources at AEP's flagship Learning and Leadership Center every week. So for our next episode, I was really hooked on the amount of money we spend on Mother's Day. That $35 billion just stuck with me. And I had some questions that I just had to explore, like, how did we get to that point of spending? And what is the history of the holiday? What's driving the giving? Like, what kind of consumer behavior is involved? And I love that, of course, looking at it from a marketing perspective. Whoa, I can't wait to tell you what I learned. Please join us again. Thanks for being here, and talk to you soon. Bye.